Aloha! I am Dr. Melissa Yee from the group Seeds of Truth, and today we're talking about health, specifically holistic dentistry or biological dentistry. In this part 2, we're actually going to focus more on the history and politics of dentistry. And my guest today is Dr. Ronald Carlson.
Thank you again.
Welcome back.
It's nice to be here.
You know, when we look at the history of dentistry, it's actually only a little bit more than 100 years. And there have been controversy from the very beginning, and even to this very day, people have very different opinions about how people should be treated, what kind of procedures are acceptable, and which ones will be paid for by the insurance companies. But I'd like to go back to the mercury controversy way back then in the 1800s. Can you talk about that?
Sure can. Mercury was introduced by the Crocaux brothers from France in about the 1810s, somewhere in there. It was called the Royal Metal Succedanean. It had mercury and silver filings. That was basically the mix, and they would mix that together and they would place it in the teeth and it would harden. And so they were looking for a product or a filling material for broken teeth or teeth that had holes in them that would last for a long time. Prior to that, they used resin, cork, stone fragments. They did use gold inlays, or real fine gold leaf, but that was only for those people that could afford that, that 1%, as we call it in this day and age. So the controversy came in and was rejected by most American dentists. Because why? The mercury is known neurotoxic substance, and common sense would tell you it would leach out. Although they said it didn't, they would see the teeth turn blue in a period of time. Nobody died of it per se, but we don't know that for sure. So that controversy, because most of the medical people, most of the dentists in those days were physicians, MDs. They were trained at certain medical schools. Baltimore College of Dental Medicine started in 1840 by mostly physicians. So the physicians had taken on a specialty training that started the division between medicine and dentistry. Although they're the same, there were two different training venues. And the physicians at that time, Green, had opted to develop their own school because it was a specialty school. It required specialty in the hardest structures in the human body called the dental organs, or the teeth. They called odontons. Teeth were not just isolated, just teeth. They're supported by the gum and the bone underneath it. So there's a certain developmental segment that runs through the body. Yeah, and that's the basis of acupuncture, actually. But so that controversy developed and eventually led to the dissolution of the National Dental Association. But slowly but surely, it became acceptable by some until the turn of the 20th century. G.V. Black introduced a certain mixture that would preclude certain ill effects of mercury, but you still had mercury. 50% of every restoration was metal filling, or mercury. And we didn't know until the 70s and 80s that it would actually volatilize, come off of the filling, and would cause systemic problems. Mm-hmm. So now we know that, and it's prevented from use in Sweden and many European countries for children under the age of 10 and for pregnant women. Same with Japan. Japan does not use that, although they still teach it in the dental schools. Yeah.
I know there's a lawyer who has been a strong opponent of the use of mercury fillings and has actually been instrumental through his work over the last 30 years in getting a treaty passed by most countries to ban the use of mercury in teeth.
Yes, Charlie Brown, part of the Holistic Dental Association, the International Academy of Biological Dentistry and Medicine, and part of the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. He works in those different organizations, very active and very bold in his presentations. He goes to these various conventions in which they are, or conferences in which they're considering the ban, and he advocates that. There is not a little amount of research on the ill effect of mercury. They know its oral toxic effects, but the ADA and the AMA continue to advocate its use. They may capitulate and say, well, we'll not use it in children, or we'll not use it in pregnant women, but it's okay for the adult population. But fortunately, in this day and age, after 40 years, I've watched the waning of mercury use in human beings because we have new filling materials, the composites, that are far superior structurally and longevity-wise and biologically. They're much more acceptable.
I know that some people have actually taken out their silver mercury fillings and replaced them with gold, thinking that that was a more durable and less toxic material. Do you have an opinion about that?
Yes, I don't think it's a wise idea. I tried to do that when I first came across in 1980. I stopped using mercury fillings in my practice, and the only thing I had at that time was either gold or to use some of the composites that had just come out. And so I found out that I would use the gold, but I did not know much about electronics in those days or the ill effect of the voltages and currents in the mouth, dissimilar metals we call it. So gold carries a very high positive polarity, and if you have that juxtaposed to amalgam filling, it creates a tremendous current voltage or current run that can cause neurological issues and maybe affect greatly the meridians of the body. Those are other things to look at.
Yeah, I know in acupuncture in the olden days they used to use either gold needles to stimulate the point.
Correct.
Or silver needles.
Correct.
To sedate the point and the condition in the body.
Or to dissipate the energy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the fact that people would choose to use gold was always very questionable to me, you know, to put them in the fillings, which were permanently in the mouth. I noticed that they had a lot of systemic problems.
Well, the profession really has approached all treatment from a very mechanistic point of view. They're looking for the material that would have the longest lifespan.
Right.
Because people don't want to pay twice for something.
Right.
And you know, that's a big thing, is how long is it going to last? I mean, how long, you know, what can I count on? How much is the insurance going to pay? So it's really a very myopic view, because really what it is, you're looking at factors that are not relevant to your good health. Mm-hmm. The gold has certain deleterious effects from its degradation. Although it degrades very little in the mouth, it does. And so we don't know completely all the implications, but I just don't particularly care to use metal, period, in the mouth. Biological dentists, a purist like me, would say, no, use composites. I wouldn't even use porcelains now because of their combination with other elements. We don't know. But the polymer resins we call composites are made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and have very little side effects from what we know.
Let's talk a little bit more about fluoridation. I know the issue comes up year after year here in Hawaii, and there's certain politicians that are being encouraged to bring up a bill every year, and fortunately there's always a storm of calls down to the legislature, and it's pushed down every time. But actually in 2003, I think it was, a bill was passed in the City Council that indirectly banned the use of fluoride in our water supply. Can you elaborate on that from its inception as a campaign issue, something for people to get involved in already back in the 80s?
Well, in the 70s, when I first came to the islands and worked at Palama Settlement and started KKV, I advocated the use of fluorine. As a community, I thought that was probably the best approach. But I had not been well versed in the research. I didn't know that this is not really conclusive. It's, it has so many holes in it, the research. The idea of community water fluoridation, although it's good, is really ill-advised. It doesn't do what they say it's going to do. Even topical fluoridation on teeth has not been shown to be effective in stopping dental decay. Why? Dental decay and gum disease are cleansing of the body fluids through the tooth structure. So decay is not just on the surface of a tooth, like the surface of this model. It's a deep inside. There's a circulatory problem with our bodies that then lends the tooth to the ill effects of premature breakdown. And that's done by bacteria. So bacteria are not the evil entities. So you're not going to ever get rid of bacteria. The mouth is the housing for thousands and thousands of different types of bacteria. Pleomorphic, meaning they change. Candida can move into actinomyces, actinomyces into Nocardia, and other things. So we don't know because they change, they transmute. And then we have viruses and other types of chemical structures, proteins, that we don't even know how they're affecting our physiology.
So if we're drinking this fluoridated water on a daily basis from birth to our later years, actually it's weakening us systemically.
Correct, it does. I believe it does. In the hard structures, we have osteosarcomas in young children, especially boys, that have been linked to epidemiological studies, meaning population studies in cities where they had fluoridation. Mm-hmm. And so the, forget the name of the organization, Paul Connett from New York, not the Anti-Fluoridation League, Fluoride Action Network, he's a biochemist and he's very outspoken about these issues, and I support his work because it's very founded in scientific inquiries that will hold the water. They're not just a program. We as dentists go to dental school and we're told the community water fluoridation you will support. This is the best thing for the children and the adults even now. Yeah. And this has not been shown to be so.
Yeah. So I understand that there was a campaign back in about the 80s to put fluoride in the water because there was a concern that the children had much tooth decay.
Correct. In the in Hawaii especially, because I've been here since 1970, I was for fluoridation in the 70s, but then I began to, about 1981, 82, 83, I had an awakening, I believe it is, to the ill-begotten ideas about community fluoridation. First, there's no choice, but secondly, it doesn't do what they're telling you. So I became part of a movement called the Pure Water Foundation. The Watermole family was somewhat involved in that, and many other people. In the early days, in the 70s, excuse me, in the early 80s, there were maybe 10, 15, 20 people. But in the 2004, we had probably over 50 or 60 people that were involved, and we descended upon the legislature and told them no, and we weren't getting in effect with the state government, but we went to the city and county because you have 9 council people, and we had passed Senate resolution, city ordinance 66, I think it was 2004. Mayor Harris signed it into law. It will preclude the use of anything that would treat or prevent a disease. So any substance that's put in our water supply is prohibited that would do a treating of a disease or a malady or the prevention of that, and that's fluorine. Yeah. So thank you, God. Now the other thing is that the big issue on the Big Island, if you know the botanical flowers, fluorine in the water supply affects at a very low concentration beautiful anthuriums and other botanical ornamental flowers. So I didn't know this either. In the history in the 50s, they were wanting to fluoridate the community water supply on the Big Island, and the farmers wouldn't have it. So the farmers became a very big adversarial group towards the councilmen or the city legislators that wanted to put fluorine in their water for the keikis. That's always a good playing the strings of the heart. We want to do this for our younger. And there's no evidence, no clear, compelling evidence that will show fluorine either in topical application, toothpaste, or the community water supply will prevent dental decay.
Well, two things I'd like to bring up. I was on a visit to Canada, to Victoria, and I went to the Bouchard Gardens there, which really prides itself on its flowers. And we had already been involved in the issue of fluoridation in Hawaii, and I inquired of the gardeners there what they did with their water, because Canada is known to be pretty extensively fluoridated. And they said they actually filtered their water so that it would be free of fluoride as well as other chemicals.
Oh, wow,
so the reason that
you.
they were able to have such amazing floral displays was in part because of the purity of the water.
Yeah.
And number two, it's come out quite clearly that the fluoride that is used in water fluoridation is actually a waste product from the aluminum industry.
Yeah, that's the most shocking.
Right.
When people hear that, even dentists have said, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because they take this raw phosphate fertilizer residue and they package it up and they sell it to cities that then put it into our water. Where otherwise, if that effluent or that waste product were dumped into the ocean, they would be in violation of federal laws or into the sewers. Mm-hmm. So they take something, a waste product, and they sell it to the cities as a preventative. It's kind of like mercury. Mercury also, outside the mouth, is a biohazard. You got to cordon it off. If you have a spill, you can't even go into the room. Right. High schools have been shut down. But yet in a dental office, they can take that same substance, mix it with silver or amalgam filings, and put it in your teeth. But once that's taken out of the tooth, either through evacuation or in pieces, it has to go underwater, and it's now a biohazard again. I mean, where's the common sense of that? It's okay to put it into the oral environment, into the human body. It's biologically acceptable. And now, but outside the mouth, it's a biohazard. Mm-hmm. This is funny.
Well, it's quite tragic, actually, because we're putting that into human bodies.
Correct.
And so with regards to both mercury and fluoride, we're still using it extensively. I know that many insurance companies insist that the dentists use the mercury fillings because it is covered by insurance.
Correct. That's how they monitor and keep in use the old thinking, is that they will pay only for those procedures that will do actually the greatest biological harm.
Right.
It's called buying it on the cheap.
Yeah.
To me, dental insurance is an anathema to good health. I think we could get rid of all the Republican Democratic healthcare system and go back to the basics of good oral hygiene, good body hygiene, good diet, nutrition, proper rest, great relationships with husbands and wives and children where you don't have these emotional stressors, and good work. Mm-hmm. And I think as a civilization, we would benefit greatly. But the tendency in our civilization now is to argue, have controversy, to force people to do certain things.
I was searching on the internet about Dr. Reinhold Voll and the theory of the holistic connection between teeth and organs. And I saw that it was being debunked by certain organizations. And so they were trying to discredit it as being something just whatever. You know, as long as you have this resistance from the establishment, it's really hard to open people's minds to what is possible, what the alternatives are. If they don't go on the internet, if they don't have a questioning mind, and therefore, I think it's really beneficial that you're willing to come out and talk about these kind of things. With regards to dental decay, I remember reading an article from Loma Linda, I think it was, and Dr. Steinman, who had come out with a theory about dental decay, the true reason for dental decay, not that it was caused by bacteria on the surface of the mouth, but it was a systemic degradation that then erupted in the breakdown of the tooth. Do you know much about that?
Yeah, Steinman and Leonora at Loma Linda were, we call it seminal, or very important in the understanding of another part of the decaying process, not only the gums but of teeth. There are two basic things we deal with in dentistry, is premature decay of teeth and premature decay of gums. We call one dental decay or caries, and we call the other periodontal disease. Actually, it's a cleansing through the ligament of the jaw that causes the toxins to have some effect on the bone support. So what they found is that in animals, if you gave them a sugar diet, they would not get decay if they had good circulation. Carbomophosphate, the parotid gland, fancy words for liquid fluids that run through the mouth. So the idea was that the internal part of the dental organ, which is like a living substance. I mean, it's a living organ. The tooth, every tooth is a living organ. It has a circulatory system and it's alive. The dentine is living tissue. So is the enamel, but it's not quite reactive as our other tissues. So what they found is as soon as you affected the circulatory system of the internal part of the tooth, decay would set in. Same with jaws and bone. As soon as you diminished the circulatory system, this is not only at Loma Linda, this is at Lamaris in Helsinki, Finland, had done a great deal. But that research is not well read by my colleagues or myself, actually. I came across that because I had this relationship with the biological associations where we had to look at that. So I think that's the benefit of being a biological dentist or a holistic dentist, is seeing the totality of the human body. What I'm doing here has an effect with the toes.
You know, the definition of holistic dentist or biological dentist, it's really quite diffuse. If you go to a association that is associating biological dentists, what is it that they have in common as opposed to being a member of the dental association?
Well, I think it's not being a member, it's not so much being a member of a dental association that makes you a great person, I mean a good thinker and a good researcher. I think it's looking through the window of physiology and biology. That's what I call a biological dentist. The person is more open and willing to begin to look through the lens or a window of the normal known physiologic responses, like what happens in tissue if you do this, this, and this, and you put an implant in, what response of the tissue is going to take place. So dentistry came from a very mechanistic background, as did all of the civilization. You know, most of our inventions back in the 17th, 18th, and 19th century and the 20th century were mechanics. Now, virtually all inventions in our world are done in the invisible realm of energy. In other words, electronics, or fusion, fission, all of these views are done without seeing. We cannot see them. So what I'm saying is I'm trying to say that our professions came out of a mechanistic, mechanical point of view, and that's the way we treated people. But now we have to look at the subtle energy given off by a dental implant, titanium, with high microcurrents. Microcurrents meaning amperage. And what's that's going to do to the tissue. And might, with that ill effect, if the theory of acupuncture is accurate, which I think it is, 5,000-year-old Chinese medicine or theories, has an impact on my liver through that liver tooth that's been just root canaled. I mean, those are things that are on the forefront of our research nowadays. And Lamaris and Steinman had done that with the theory of dental decay, because until their research, everybody thought decay started with bad bacteria on the surface of the tooth and the plaque, and you had to get rid of plaque. Now they know that the plaque is actually a normal physiologic function to protect the tooth. Mm-hmm. Steinman and Leonora and Lamaris from Finland have shown that that bacterial plaque is actually a protective mechanism, not to be taken off necessarily. That doesn't mean the person doesn't brush and clean the teeth. You want to create, that's the principle of circulation. When you take a brush, you're creating saliva and fluid movement. It's like the body. The human body has to get up in the morning and get active, otherwise it becomes a blob. After 50 years of sitting in a chair, you become not functional.
That's why I know dentists always emphasize flossing and using those little brushes in between the teeth if the teeth are very close.
Correct.
Together. What do you have to say about what people can do on a practical basis, on a daily basis, with regards to brushing, toothpaste, mouthwash? What are simple things that they can be doing?
The brushing and flossing is very important, but not brushing with overbrushing. Many people overbrush and they'll start cutting their teeth. After about 30, 40 years, with those bristles, they can cut the teeth. So you want to have a nicely rounded brush, floss, then rinse thoroughly with saline or salt solutions or baking soda or oil pulling.
What is oil pulling?
Oil pulling is, and actually it was known 150 years ago. I did some research on that. They were suggesting certain oils that the mouth, you would rinse in your mouth and then expectorate, and that would pull the poisons out of your teeth and your gums. Everything comes out of the body. The body sweats, right? So the eyes, the makapia, fluids come out of the nose, the ears, the mouth. That's normal physiology.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carlson, for a very informative and educational discussion here. I think a lot of people need to be looking more into the importance of what holistic dentistry can contribute to the profession. I think it's wonderful work that you are doing, and I think we need to keep getting more educated and keep asking questions.
That's right.
So thanks. Thanks again, and I think we have much more to discuss in the future, so thank you so much for tuning in, and check out our website, or our Facebook page, Seeds of Truth, for information about many other topics, and we'll be back again soon. Thank you very much, and aloha.